Welcome to another Excel CEO tip. In this episode, we're going to cover how to quickly align to columns or rows or both. And you'll see by the time we're finished how quick and easy that is. And if you've ever had any experience with trying to align anything manually, especially trying to align to the Excel grid, it can be very frustrating, but it doesn't have to be that way. So here we have a pivot table here, and we're going to go over some examples of how to align and how to keep things aligned, especially if you're going to be making this into a presentation type of a report. And to show how easy this is, one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the View tab, and we're going to uncheck the grid lines because even though the columns stay intact, you don't need to see them to align to them. And with this pivot table, one of the things we're going to do is add a few slicers. So we have the 2017 slicer here. That doesn't really tell us anything, so let's get rid of it. So let's go in with state, and we want to pull in a few others. State, region, and store number we'll go with. So one of the things we can do there is we can come here to the pivot table analyze contextual tab, and from there we'll go to insert slicer, which brings up the insert slicers pop-up menu. And so we'll bring in state, region, and store number from there. So that brings in all three at once. It does click us out of the pivot table temporarily, but it gives us all of our slicers to work with, and we can start aligning them to this Excel grid and to the pivot table. So the first thing that I like to do when I'm working with slicers is I like to make them a little more organized, keep them the same size, and not have them take up too much space. So let's come up here and we'll do about a 0.16 to make the options in them a little more legible. And let's go with region first, since that's the highest level of the hierarchy. You can see if I come up here and I try to align it, for the first one it works out all right. But if I try to align up here and I want to align with the grid manually, I can use shift and I can try to move that way. Doesn't work so well. I can go manually and I can try to line up, but it takes more time than it really needs to. So I'll do Control Z to undo those. And what we can do here is I can actually take this region here and I can move it up into the corner. But then when I click on this bottom right corner of it, if I click the Alt key, then you can see that it's moving along with the different row numbers here. And it's actually also aligning with the column numbers. So very quickly and easily I can move right here with this grid, and you can see that the grid lines are gone, but these are still aligning very nicely. And so if I click shift before I click on this state one, then it still stays in line. Even though I'm not adjusting the size of it right now, I can actually move it and align it with the grid that way. And then same thing, I can align it with the grid there. Same thing with the store numbers, and I can put them up over at the top of this pivot table. We can see that it hangs over just a little bit, so I can actually do the alignments separately or together. It doesn't really matter. And now if we have these up here, right now the pivot table is set on, it's actually set on auto fit. So you'll see here when this moves, you can see that the alignment between the region and the state here moved. And we don't want that, because if you're putting together a report, you want it to stay right where you had it. So a quick way to overcome that is right-click here on the pivot table and come to Pivot Table Options and uncheck the Auto Fit column widths on Update box. Another quick tip you can use here on data is number of items to retain per field. By default, that's going to be set to automatic, and you can put that on none. And that way it doesn't take up too much space in your report. So now, if I uncheck boxes, the pivot table moves, but my slicers don't. Another thing you can do to overcome that is you can actually come over here and click on your slicers, right-click on them, and go to Size and Properties. And then in the Properties box there, you can do don't move or size with cells. And then no matter how your pivot table adjusts those slicers or other objects, you can use other objects besides slicers, company logos, different shapes, smart art, whatever the case may be. You can align any of those quick and easily using Alt as you adjust to the columns or rows as you click and drag, and that'll save you a lot of time and headaches on adjusting any object that you have in your Excel workbook, whether or not your grid lines are visible. Hopefully you found this tip useful, and have a great day.